Before Brenda Lee ever understood what fame was, America had already decided what her voice meant. It was not the sound people expected from a child. It carried restraint, gravity, and a quiet ache that felt borrowed from a much older life. That contrast is what stopped listeners in their tracks, and what pulled her into an industry that never slowed down once it found her. By the time she reached her early teens, Brenda Lee was everywhere, on radios, on television, on tour, hailed as Little Miss Dynamite, a nickname that celebrated her power while quietly demanding constant explosion. Yet that intensity masked something deeper. This was not a carefree prodigy enjoying the spotlight, but a child whose voice had become a tool for survival and stability. The industry rewarded that voice generously, but it also accelerated her life beyond any natural rhythm. Long before she could choose who she wanted to be, momentum had already chosen for her, and childhood slipped quietly out of reach. Poverty, radio waves, and a first audience. Brenda Mae Tarpley was born in December 1944 in Atlanta, Georgia, into a working-class family defined by instability. Her father followed construction work wherever it appeared, and the family moved constantly, living in small houses without running water, often sharing a single bed. Security was fragile, and tomorrow was never guaranteed. In that world, music was not a luxury, but a lifeline. A battery-powered radio opened a window into another America, and Brenda absorbed those sounds instinctively. Church became her first stage, not as a place of performance, but of sincerity. Singing was communal, emotional, and real. By the age of 3, she was already being placed on store counters to sing for spare change, not as novelty, but because her voice carried weight. When local contests and radio shows followed, music stopped being occasional. It became structured. Even before she could understand ambition, her voice had begun working, anchoring a family that had very little else to rely on. Loss, acceleration, and no time to pause. Everything shifted in 1953 when Brenda's father died suddenly in a workplace accident. Grief was real, but survival left no room to linger in it. Brenda kept singing, only now with urgency layered beneath routine. Performances multiplied, radio stations, fairs, early television appearances, each one another step into professionalism before childhood had properly closed. Cameras became familiar. Microphones were lowered to meet her height. A wooden box lifted her just enough to be seen. The pace intensified quietly but decisively. When her family traveled to see Red Foley's Ozark Jubilee in 1955, Brenda was invited on stage with no rehearsal, singing Jambalaya before a national audience. It looked like luck, but it was the result of years spent performing without safety nets. Soon after, she became a regular on the show. From that moment on, life stopped dividing neatly into before and after. It became one long forward motion, driven by expectation and momentum she did not create. Contracts, control, and the cost of being young. By the late 1950s, the contradiction at the center of Brenda Lee's career became unavoidable. She was treated as a professional while being denied real agency. Her contract with Ozark Jubilee ended early due to legal disputes over management and labor, a conflict reported as business but felt personally. It was her first lesson in how little control a child star truly had. Around the same time, Decca Records signed her, shifting focus from television to recording. Early singles struggled to find an audience, not because of quality, but because the industry could not decide where she belonged. Country, pop, rockabilly, she fit all and none. To make her easier to sell, her image was frozen. She was labeled Little Brenda Lee, her age understated, her identity simplified. Yet the voice refused to shrink. When One Step at a Time crossed genre boundaries and Dynamite followed, the narrative changed. She was no longer a curiosity. She was a force, and the machine tightened around her accordingly. Hits, pressure, and emotional precision success arrived rapidly and without relief. From Sweet Nothings to I Want to Be Wanted and Fool Number One, Brenda Lee stacked hit after hit, not through theatrics, but through intimacy. She sang inward, compressing emotion rather than projecting it outward, creating a closeness that felt personal to listeners. That restraint became her signature and her burden. Each release carried the expectation of continuation, not exploration. 9 consecutive top 10 hits between 1960 and 1962 placed her in record-setting territory, but statistics masked strain. Recording sessions overlapped with tours, appearances followed one another without pause, and there was no margin for error. Even as songs like Break It to Me Gently revealed growing emotional subtlety, the pressure only increased. Brenda Lee was measured, constantly, by charts, by sales, by whether the fire still burned. The quieter her delivery became, the heavier the weight behind it grew, unseen but persistent. A Christmas song that waited for time. In 1958, amid packed schedules and low expectations, Brenda Lee recorded a Christmas song almost as an afterthought. Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree was light, playful, and free of the tension that defined much of her catalog. At the time, it barely registered. Initial sales were negligible, and the song disappeared into seasonal rotation. Yet unlike the rest of her career, this song was never forced to compete. It simply returned each December, gathering familiarity rather than urgency. Over years, then decades, it embedded itself into family traditions and memory. In the digital era, the song found new life through streaming, rising steadily on the charts long after its creation. When it finally reached number 1 more than 60 years later, it did so without spectacle. Brenda Lee did not chase the moment. The song had outlived the market that once dismissed it, proving that cultural endurance often works on a timeline no industry can control. Leaving the center without disappearing. As American pop shifted in the mid-1960s, Brenda Lee did not fall so much as drift outward. The British invasion changed tastes, favoring bands and generational statements over tightly constructed solo hits. Rather than force herself back into relevance, she pivoted toward country music, returning to the storytelling roots that first shaped her voice. Johnny One Time marked that transition, followed by steady success throughout the 1970s. These were not attempts to reclaim dominance, but to build longevity. Country radio allowed space. Songs could breathe, emotions could unfold naturally, and careers were measured in years rather than moments. Brenda Lee brought her pop precision into that world, creating a hybrid sound that felt grounded rather than nostalgic. Touring continued, but at a human pace. She was no longer a symbol to be consumed, but an artist working steadily within a genre that valued continuity. Survival, not spectacle, became the quiet achievement of this phase, a private center that held firm. Away from the stage, Brenda Lee built a life that resisted exposure. Her marriage to Ronnie Shacklet in 1963 was not presented as a narrative, but protected as a boundary. He stood outside the spotlight, offering stability rather than competition. Together they raised 2 daughters while Brenda continued working, learning to divide her energy in ways her childhood never allowed. Family became an anchor, not an escape. As honors accumulated later, Hall of Fame inductions, Lifetime Achievement Awards, they felt less like redemption and more like confirmation. By then, Brenda Lee had already stepped into a role that did not require constant performance. She became a presence within music history rather than a figure chasing it. When she chose silence, it was not absence, it was completion. A life once pushed forward too fast finally found its own pace, proving that endurance sometimes means knowing when to stop speaking and letting the work remain. Legacy without explanation. Brenda Lee's story does not end in collapse or resurrection. It ends in continuity, when Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree returned to the top of the charts decades later. It did not reopen old wounds or demand a comeback. It simply confirmed what time had already decided. Her voice had endured. Across pop, rockabilly, and country, she left behind a model of emotional precision without excess, strength without spectacle. She did not rewrite her past to suit the present, nor did she explain her silences. The music carried the weight. That is why it lasted. Brenda Lee stands as proof that a career does not need constant visibility to remain alive. Some voices outlast their era because they were never fully of it to begin with. They move quietly through memory, returning when needed, unchanged. And when history finally speaks their name again, it does not feel like revival. It feels like recognition, long overdue, arriving exactly on time.